Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a really fascinating botanical investigation today. We're going to be looking at a strikingly architectural plant known as the screw pine or pandanus. Now, you've probably seen it. It's a staple in tons of landscapes. But as you'll see, it hides a bit of a secret right down at its foundation. So here is our central mystery for today. Why are the bottom leaves of the hardy screw pine falling off? You know, the screw pine is famous in gardening circles for being an absolute survivor. Yet everyday gardeners sometimes look at the base of this seemingly invincible plant and see what looks like a slow decline. We're talking leaves turning colors, drooping, and just shedding entirely. How can a plant that is so incredibly tough look so vulnerable and weak at its foundation? Okay, let's dive into part 1, the shedding leaf mystery, diagnosing the plant. According to our source material from a recent post in Notes on Gardening, the main symptom you're going to spot is the literal shedding of leaves right at the base of the pandanus. Just picture it for a second. You might be walking through a beautiful garden, admiring the lush, spiked top of the plant, but then you look down to the soil level, and the very bottom is actively losing its foliage. It creates this really stark, sometimes alarming visual contrast. You've got this vibrant, healthy top, and then this bare or even dying bottom. For anyone trying to maintain a pristine landscape, that is incredibly frustrating. But what's actually driving this whole shedding process? Which brings us to section 2, natural aging versus light starvation, finding the cause. We have to put on our garden detective hats here, because we're looking at two totally different biological realities. On one hand, we have the natural growth cycle. As the screw pine grows upward, pushing out all that fresh new foliage at the top, the older leaves at the base naturally turn brown and drop. And you know what? That's totally harmless. It's just the plant aging gracefully, making room for new growth. But on the other hand, we have a really dangerous environmental factor, a lack of sunlight. When those base leaves are starved of light, they literally lose the ability to photosynthesize. When that happens, they don't just age naturally, instead they turn this sickly yellow and fall off. So your crucial diagnostic tool, actually the easiest way to figure this out, is just looking at the color. Are the leaves turning brown and dropping from natural upward growth, or are they turning yellow and dropping because they are quite literally starving for light? Let's move to section 3, hardy but not invincible, environmental limits. We hear the word hardy thrown around a lot in landscaping, right? Well, for the screw pine, being hardy simply means it's drought tolerant. It requires little to no maintenance when it comes to watering, which is awesome. But, and I think this brilliantly illustrates the nuance of gardening, hardy does not mean invincible. Even a tough plant is still completely vulnerable to incorrect planting environments. It can survive a massive drought without a single drop of water for sure, but it absolutely cannot magically survive terrible landscaping choices, like say being planted somewhere completely devoid of the necessary light it needs to thrive. Let's look at this direct quote from the author, Ang, from their Notes on Gardening post. They were observing a specific struggling plant in a photograph and pointed this out. The one you see in the photo is likely affected by incorrect planting within a shady microclimate that does not promote its optimal growth. That phrase right there highlights the hidden, silent danger of the shady microclimate. You might buy a screw pine thinking, oh, this tough plant can totally handle that dark, empty corner of my yard. But that shady microclimate is exactly what stifles its optimal growth. It directly leads to that yellowing, starving foliage at the base we just talked about. All right, on to section 4, pruning for optimal growth, pruning and care. So if you want a truly decorative screw pine, here is your direct game plan. First, absolutely avoid those shady microclimates when you're planting. Second, you've got to ensure adequate sunlight so the entire plant can actually perform photosynthesis. Third, you need to actively prune and trim those bottom leaves. Remember, even though it's classified as a quote-unquote low-maintenance plant, if you want it to look like a pristine decorative garden piece, you kind of have to put in a little work. And fourth, this active pruning is exactly what shapes the plant to encourage that beautiful upward growth. Proper trimming and correct lighting, those are your two essential tools for a really healthy pandanus. Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. Take a look at this question. Are your low-maintenance garden plants secretly suffering in the wrong microclimate? It's a really provocative thought, isn't it? We so often plant these hardy survivors, walk away, and just assume they're doing perfectly fine. But as we've clearly seen with the screw pine today, even the absolute toughest plants have their environmental limits. So I want to challenge you to take what you've learned today, step out into your own backyard, and take a much closer look at your greenery. Are your plants simply aging naturally, or are they out there starving in the shadows? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those great questions, and happy learning.